Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Startup Operators Weekly Roundup. The Weekly Roundup is a show for people who like to stay updated with the latest developments from the Indian startup ecosystem. If this is the first time you're tuning into the channel, do consider subscribing for more regular updates. Now, the past week has really been interesting with a lot of firsts in the nation. Bangalore becomes the first city to launch a QR-based ticketing service, and also the Auto Union of Bangalore has launched its own app to rival the likes of Uber and Ola. Along with that, Ola has become the largest EV manufacturer in India. After taking over the reins at Twitter, Elon Musk has significantly downsized its operations in India. Apart from that, Pilani has issued new guidelines for students and faculty to take a period of up to 1 year to work on their own startup ideas. And again, Byju's in the news. Messi is now the latest brand ambassador for this edtech company. And apart from that, we have the latest season of Shark Tank coming up, and a lot of memes have been doing the rounds on Twitter last week. But we'll be getting to that later. Roshan, how has the week been for you?
Week's been fantastic, I should say. Uh, People have asked me about my skincare routine and everything. Well, a few of them at least.
But they
Uh,
don't know that it's not a skincare routine; it's just the weather of Bangalore.
it's a natural glow. No, but I think, yeah, I mean, a couple of days in the sauna, maybe, right? And some face oils won't hurt. But yeah, it's been a pretty interesting week, I should say. We celebrated Karnataka Rajyotsava last week, the founding day of the state. Considering that Karnataka has birthed so many startups, I think the startup Janta should at least take a moment to celebrate that. Also, definitely watch this movie called Kantara. You could consider it some kind of a bootstrapped project, shot to the budget of about 16 crores. That's it. In fact, parts of it, people say it's kind of like a vlog, but very, very impactful. I've watched it a couple of times. I highly recommend it.
So talking about Karnataka, right? I mean, Bangalore, which has been known as the tech capital of India, just got even more techier with WhatsApp partnering with the Bangalore Metro Corporation to launch India's first QR-based ticketing service. With this, people can just drop a message on WhatsApp. I think it's powered by Yellow Messenger, where commuters can check train timetables and even recharge their metro cards and book tickets. India is WhatsApp's probably the largest market, right? With I think close to 400 million users, and it's great to see large enterprises partnering with government and other public units to bring convenience to the customers, right? And I think this is just a many of the first that we'll be seeing in the country.
Yeah. No, I've actually been waiting for the whole WhatsApp API to sort of enable the hundreds, if not thousands, of applications that can be built over it, right? Similar to what WeChat has done in China. But somehow, I mean, I think WhatsApp India has been slow on that front, right? We've only seen recently the WhatsApp payments,
Right.
being enabled. Of course, I mean, that went into a little bit of a trouble with the RBI guidelines and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, this is a fantastic initiative. We've had Rashid of Yellow Messenger on the podcast earlier, where he spoke about, how conversational AI can, really transform customer service and stuff like that. And this is fantastic. I've seen how the experience works, and it's very, very convenient, right? I mean, you just like type your destination, and then, you get a QR code
Yeah.
sent. You pay through UPI, right? I mean, it's fantastic. I think, we have to evangelize mass transit, and things that make that a little more seamless is always welcome, I would
And
say.
especially in
Especially,
Bangalore,
yeah,
given the traffic.
especially in Bangalore, given the traffic, given the roads, and given the lack of availability of cabs and whatnot, right? I mean, this is fantastic.
Oh, yeah, I can't really comment on cab availability, but hopefully getting an auto will become easier because the city's auto union has launched its own indigenous app called Namma Yatri, which is touted to take on the likes of Uber and Ola, right? I mean, we have seen in the past roundups the cases filed in Karnataka High Court regarding how Rapido, Ola, Uber are charging more than what the minimum fare has been set, right? I mean, of course, this is because of the convenience and all the stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, a city's auto union coming up with its own app, right?
Awesome. Yeah.
That's really big
In
news.
fact, we called this, I think, 3 or 4 weeks back, right? I mean, on
Hmm.
the roundup, where we said that some kind of a union or government or whatever should come up with their own app. Who knows? I mean, they've been building this all the while. So it was scheduled to launch in November, and they've been on the dot. They've
Yeah,
launched in November, right?
they
Available
launched
on Play
on
Store,
November 2nd, and I think it has been in a beta testing phase for past few
right?
weeks. Well,
Yeah.
I have it installed. I'm just waiting to travel the next time and I'll check out the
Yeah,
services.
it's supposedly cheaper as well. They only have about 10 rupees extra for pickup. And you have the option to tip the driver as well, which I think is a good initiative. I saw a comparison where the Namaya 3 app was about 40 or 50 bucks less than Ola and Uber. So I think more people will use it. I certainly will whenever I need an auto, perhaps. So one concern is that, look, Ola and Uber is a lot more than the app itself, right? I mean, the app is part of it, but they will have to look at service and support and all of those things. But I guess they would have thought through all of this stuff. So yeah, I'm certainly going to keep an eye out for how this pans out, because I think if this kind of a thing develops, right? I mean, who knows? I mean, there could be a public utility app for maybe food, right? I mean, a Zomato or a Swiggy equivalent as well, right? Who knows? Just might happen, I think.
It's all up to the imagination. Okay, again, talking about Ola, right? We have seen the Ola's electric and the Ola EV has ran into its own fair share of troubled waters. But last month, they had an unprecedented sale of 20,000 units in a month. So in October of 2022. And this is the highest ever for any EV manufacturer in India. This also makes Ola Electric the highest selling electric scooter in the country with more than 50% market share in the premium scooter segment across ICE and EVs. They're working on a lot of futuristic projects. They have the largest EV factory in India. I mean, that is being compared with the likes of Gigafactory of Tesla. How do you see Ola trying to take this forward? I mean, firstly, of course, kudos to them to come out of the whole headwinds they were facing earlier this year and now to become the largest manufacturer of EV in the country.
This more than anything, it validates the fact that there is huge demand for EV, right? There's absolutely a lot of demand for EV, and all the FAME subsidies, the PLA, all of that definitely helps, right? And manufacturers have not been able to keep up with demand, right? I mean, we've seen the case of Ather, where they've said that demand is way more than what we can supply right now, and so on. So everyone is literally scrambling, and I think Ola has the capacity at this point of time to sort of serve the needs of folks who want EV, right? They also had a Diwali sale quite recently, which kind of explains the spike in sales, I suppose, right? But this is fantastic. I mean, considering all of the stuff that they've had to deal with over the last year and a half, with the EVs catching fire and whatnot, right? Who can forget that amazing thumbnail that we made some time back? It's good news for sure. And again, as I keep saying, that by 2030, I think some key segments of autos will definitely become EV-fied, I would say.
Right. So, given this whole macroeconomic conditions of the recessions, then the market slowing down, we have seen its effect on the Indian startup ecosystem, right? All companies are now focusing on profitability. But and this was highly concentrated within the edtech sector itself. But last year, we are seeing this problem not only within the edtech sector in India, and this is a global phenomenon. And in middle of all of this, even Elon Musk has made it to the news. Last week, he took over Twitter after a $44 billion deal, and to focus on profitability, they're letting almost 50% of its workforce go. And I think as a result of that, the entire India operations team has been sacked. And folks in the US have filed a case in the court of Delaware because they were not given proper compensation or notice of this downsizing. Notably, the engineering product teams were downsized, although Twitter had announced plans to expand its engineering team in India, which works out of Bangalore as recently as April of 2021. But this phenomenon we are seeing in Twitter, we're seeing it in Byju's. This is setting some sort of precedent for top startups that hey, they can do whatever they want.
No, I mean, see, there's certainly a lot of flab in some of the larger startups for sure, right? And Twitter, for example, if you were to take headcount per user or even like revenue per user, etc., I mean, they're not that great, right? So it was long due. I mean, people have long called for a right sizing of the company per se, right? And Elon is perhaps doing what is required in the current circumstances, right? I mean, is he doing it the way that would be amenable to everyone? I don't know. That's questionable, right? I mean, considering some of the letters that are doing the rounds and whatnot, right? But yeah, I mean, it's certainly not straightforward in the US to fire people, right? I mean, you have to give a 60-day or 90-day notice, right? And bunch of politicians have already jumped in, right? I mean,
Right.
AOC, for example, has been tweeting at Elon about a bunch of this stuff. So it will get tricky, I should say, but it's the I mean, Elon owns the business, man. I mean, he has to do what he has to do. And certainly, I mean, I don't know about the engineers, but at least a policy team, right? I mean, hundreds and hundreds of people doing all of this content moderation and stuff. I think, I mean, there should be a more algorithmic way of like deciding what's right and what's wrong. I'm not saying you don't need humans to intervene, but I think considering that Twitter's policies were entirely arbitrary, right? I mean, it's hard. But actually, I think I'm being a little harsh as well. Like, I was watching an episode of Joe Rogan's with Vijaya Gadde and Jack Dorsey, and they have a hard job. They have a real hard job, right? And people have painted Vijay out to be like one of this like evil types who is just moving pieces on the board, whatever. But she's had a very very hard job as well, right? So nobody discounts the complexity or the nature of the problem as such, but I do feel that there was a lot of slack.
Yeah, I mean, the top executives are not wrong, right? I mean, okay, maybe at one point or time they might have overhired or maybe not hired properly. And right now, yes, since the conversations are about profitability, it kind of makes sense to look into the books and understand what exactly is going on, where to invest, what to let go.
See, one thing to also add is that look, Twitter employees have been like at least the vocal majority has been this activist types, and I guess I mean the Valley is kind of paying the dues for this whole bring your authentic self to work kind of a thing, right? Where people's politics and people's personal opinions and all of those were discussed on the work table, right? I mean, all that has a drawback, obviously. This is why, I mean, I suppose in the 70s or 80s, whenever this corporate culture was like, peak corporate culture was formed, right, they always said that you kept your personal beliefs and politics and everything aside from your work because it didn't really concern your work as such, right? And so I don't know, I mean, I feel like some of this is like coming full circle in that sense, right? So yeah, it will be interesting times for sure.
Yeah, even closer home, right? ChargeBee has also announced that it's laying off about 10% of its workforce, right? And again, this is to change its hiring plan to align with its current priorities. But ChargeBee is offering 3 months of pay and 3 months of extended medical benefits for affected employees. But if you look at, I mean, okay, ChargeBee is working in the Indian SaaS space, right? And within that, there are a lot of companies which are working with SMEs and MSMEs. And there are another set of companies that works with large enterprises. Now, with the whole recession and downturns coming in, I don't think both these sets of companies will be affected equally. There'll be a lot more churn within SaaS companies that have smaller ticket sizes versus those that serve
Yeah, for
enterprise
sure.
clients.
Yeah, because enterprise is sticky revenue, right? I mean, the likes of HDFC or the likes of Berkshire will not cancel contracts on a whim. They can't do that, right? But whereas, I mean, if it's a smaller business, right, a 10%, 50%, even 100% business, I mean, some things like this can be entirely like up to the founder or the upper management as such, right? So yeah, I mean, it is a little sad, right? Considering 2021, the buoyancy was so much that people were planning for growth and growth and growth, right? I mean, now they've had to sort of revise their expectation, and literally every founder has been asked to extend their runway, right? Have like 2 years at least, and they're doing what is right for the company. I just hope, as ChargeBee has demonstrated, that they do it in a way that is amenable to the employees as well, right? It's tough times for sure, and it may take some time to resolve itself.
All of this conversation I'm portraying that right now it's not really a good time to join startups.
No,
But
I
I
mean,
mean,
these are ups and downs that are always there. They've always been there, right? I mean, it's been there for the last 50 years. Depending on what economic theory you subscribe to, whether it's a 9 or 10-year cycle, whether it's a 30-year cycle, etc. I mean, this downturn was long expected, right? And it's kind of unraveling in a way that will have consequences across the spectrum, right? Yeah, but yeah, I mean, we've seen those past cycles through, and we will see this through as well, right? I mean, and I've always said that product and financial cycles evolve independently. There's a great thread by Chris Dixon. I will probably like reference it in the description, where he makes the case for the kind of companies that got built during the downturn, right? I mean,
yes.
2008, if you look at it, Slack, Nutanix, MongoDB, etc. And now is when I guess your mission, your hypothesis, everything is battle tested, and we'll come out of this stronger, wiser. Yeah,
Yeah, we're
hopefully
excited
better off.
like maybe 5, 6 years down the line, which will be the big startups emerging, right?
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, in the 2008 crisis, we had the likes of Slack and all come in. And maybe this downturn will also be kind of similar because BITS Pilani just announced that they are going to allow students and faculty members to take a year off to focus on building their own startups.
Nice.
Right. With this move, BITS is also taking on the likes of IITs, which continue to dominate the startups and unicorn ecosystems in the country. And even the alumni of BITS Pilani is stellar, right? Of course, Yamni and Venkat, who are co-founders of Vimo, they are from BITS Pilani. And there are over 13 of them making it to the list of Indian unicorns. That includes the likes of Zeta, MPL, Swiggy, Big Basket, and Grow. And as part of this new policy, there are a lot of perks which the university is offering to its students, right? I mean, for example, if you're starting out of the university, you can register your dormitory address as a registered address for the company. Course credits for working on innovative prototypes and business models will be awarded. Subsidized accommodation for entrepreneurs with incubated startups. And it's great, right? It's not only the
Yeah.
IITs that are taking the lead, but other colleges are too. And now,
Yeah, no, Bits, had a very active entrepreneurship cell as well, historically, and they're very innovative, man. I mean, for example, students can, choose their own course and everything. So literally very flexible on that front. They have economics and finance departments in an engineering college, which is pretty amazing. So this is fantastic. Every large good institution, whether it's Stanford or Harvard or whatever else, has this option, and I think it's good that Indian institutions are thinking on those lines as well.
Yeah, so when I was checking colleges to apply to and I was checking the rankings, I was following this website called QS Rankings, right? And I did not see any Indian colleges that made it to even the top 200 list. But if I were to open it today, I'm pretty sure we'll see at least a handful of names in that.
Yeah, the rankings are also skewed, right? I mean, it depends on like parameters and stuff like that, right? I mean, facilities and so on and so forth. But I think in terms of the quality of talent, maybe the pedagogy and everything, I think, yeah, we could compare, I suppose. I mean, I'm not very, very certain about that, but I mean, at least in this day and age, right? I mean, knowledge is sort of democratized, right? So it's the people around you that really matter. And I feel this is a fantastic initiative for people to like take a year off and do something and make impact. So it's great. This whole thing takes the project work to the next level, I would say.
Yeah, and somehow I feel this is kind of mirroring the whole Israel's education curriculum, right? I mean, unlike just giving theoretical projects over there, the problem statements which students are given are directly in sync with the problems the country is facing. So I remember I was watching some documentary where they're talking about how they increase the whole farming output of the country by crowdsourcing the solution from students in schools and colleges, right? And yeah, I mean, there has been enough talk that how India lags behind in terms of like how ancient India's curriculum is, but it's good to see that we're making progress over there.
Yeah.
Moving on to the next topic, the FIFA World Cup is coming up, and earlier Byju's had announced that they will be the title sponsors for this global phenomenon. And right now, last week, Byju's also announced that they have roped in Messi as its first global brand ambassador of its social impact arm, Education for All. And also, the timing of this announcement could not be any better, right? Right now, the entire internet is abuzz with team descriptions and all. And here we have Messi, who will be the captain of the Argentina football team, and this will probably be his last World Cup as well. So I mean, this is like a marketing masterstroke.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, forget about the ICC World Cup and whatnot, or the T20 World Cup, everything. Indian startups are now sponsoring, FIFA level tournaments, right? And Lionel Messi, I mean, come on, it can't get bigger than that, right? Some Cristiano Ronaldo fans may disagree, but it's a huge thing, and it's coming at a time where obviously their PR is not on great terms with all the layoffs that are happening. In fact, I was watching an interview where Divya Gokulnath, who's one of the co-founders of Baijus, was talking about this initiative, and she said, "Look, it's a value alignment. It's not really a business deal only, but considering that Lionel Messi charges anywhere between 20-30 million dollars for endorsements." There's a significant amount of money that's also gone into this, right? And it's interesting also to tie it to that social initiative, Education for All,
Right.
which makes it a little more wider, right, in terms of impact and so on. It's interesting. I mean, anytime you get one of these stars to be your brand ambassador, I mean, it brings in a lot of trust, credibility, along with the reach and engagement, right? So let's see. I mean, and this could be good for Byju's, I think.
Yeah, and also this is not the first time that Messi has partnered with an Indian company as a brand ambassador, right? I think back in 2016 they had partnered with Tata Motors as well when Tata released the whole Thiago car.
Oh yeah, of course.
Right? And
I
I
remember.
did not know this, but Thiago, the car is named after Messi's son.
Yeah. I remember this. Yeah.
Earlier it was supposed to be called Zika,
Uh-huh.
Zica, but around that time the whole
Zika virus and
the
everything.
Zika
Yeah.
virus broke in South America, right? And hence the name change. And wow, I mean, imagine having a car named after your kid.
Yeah.
Okay, I think the biggest highlight of this roundup is going to be this upcoming season of Shark Tank, right? The new trailer has been out on Twitter, and wow, isn't Twitter filled with memes? So Ashneer Grover is being replaced with the co-founder and CEO of Car Dekho Insurance Dekho, Amit Jain. And well, I don't think fans have really taken that well. There are a lot of memes doing the round saying ये सब दोगलापन है. But what is your take on that?
Hey, it's interesting. I mean, Shark Tank truly made startups mainstream in India. There's so much enthusiasm for all the pitches and the sharks and whatnot. And yeah, I think the concept will survive beyond Ashneer, I suppose. Of course, I mean, people will miss some of the comments, right? I mean, like Doglapan and stuff like that. I was watching this pitch of Nabi. Have you seen that? It's the belly button shaped nerve. Yeah, I mean, I was watching that. It's hilarious.
So yeah, I mean, I think there'll be more interesting pitches on
Hmm.
this season, considering that more people definitely know about the show, right? So yeah, I mean, this could be very interesting.
Compared to last month, November has definitely seen an increase of venture capital within the ecosystem. Amagi has raised $82 million, which was led by General Atlantic, and has a current valuation of $1.45 billion. They turned unicorn in March after raising $95 million. Cash Karo, which is a Gurugram-based cashback and coupon site, raised 130 crore rupees or $15.5 million approximately, and this was led by Affle Global Pte Limited. The Sleep Company, which is an online retailer of mattresses, had received a Series B funding of 177 crore rupees from Premji Invest and Fireside Ventures. Then we have Y Combinator backed Decentro, which is a banking and payments API infrastructure startup, raised $4.7 million from Rapid Ventures, Leonis VC, and Uncorrelated Ventures. The company has built a bank account centric products, which includes account issuance and linking, which have helped lenders comply with all of the latest regulations, including the most recent digital lending guidelines, which were announced by RBI. Now, it's good to see that funding check sizes are increasing and there are more number of deals happening in the ecosystem.
Yeah.
What do you make of that?
Definitely some very interesting startups that you've called out, right? Decentro, for example, has a very API-based approach. It helps fintechs integrate with banks, and they have modules for KYC, for customer onboarding, accounts and payments, and so on and so forth. We've spoken to Nuclei and Setu on the podcast earlier, and this is definitely a need, right? I mean, considering that a lot more startups are going to engage with banks and so on. So it has a very plug and play infrastructure. I think it's fantastic stuff. The entrepreneurs as well, fairly experienced. He's had an exit earlier. Amagi is one of my favorite startups, right? I mean, they're building this whole media infrastructure. They're helping some of these media companies leverage the power of the cloud. Think of it as ad insertion, monetization, all of this on OTT platforms and so on. The team of founders is very experienced. They've also had an exit before with ImpulseSoft, and we should perhaps get them on the podcast sometime. Again, very, very good businesses, and great to see some activity of this sort happen.
So there's this interesting tweet put out last week by Arnav Gupta, and his tweet says, "I was in USA, specifically in San Francisco and other parts of Silicon Valley for the larger part of last month, and I talked to over 25 people, mostly Indian but not all, and mostly working on big tech but not all as engineers. And here's the thread of the vibe I got." And then he goes on to explain what his understanding was of working in big tech companies. Do you want to summarize that for us?
So this is a very interesting thread, and I should say it's very directionally very right. Even though I mean, some might consider it exaggerated or skewed or whatever, and proportions may vary. But I've experienced something similar, right? I was in SF about a month back, and I kind of spoke to folks, from big tech and from startups and everything. And I think there is a sort of a general, sluggishness that one gets. I was at a few events, and you could notice that everyone is like really concerned about their jobs at this point of time. And I don't know, maybe there would have been a lot more optimism even a couple of years back, but something has changed for sure. And there's a certain amount of sluggishness. It doesn't have that same sort of spark that I perhaps experienced earlier, right? Anyway, it's a very interesting thread about life in big tech and SF. Do check it out.
Yeah, folks, let us know in the comment section below as to what do you think are the biggest differences between the Indian startup ecosystem and the Silicon Valley. It will be great to
Yeah,
read through some of those.
that should be interesting. Yeah.
All right, so Roshan, before we wrap up this roundup, why don't you take us through some of the conversations you plan on having this week?
So last week I spoke to Anand of CleverTap, and it was one of the best conversations I've had in recent times. Obviously, because I think Anand is, comes from the SaaS world. I'm from the SaaS world. There are lots of overlaps to talk about, and also, I've been a fan of his work as well. I've used Burp way back when. Burp was acquired by Network 18. Anand met his co-founders there, and they're solving this whole problem of app retention, which I think is an evergreen problem. And there's a lot of wisdom in this podcast, really, about building, scaling. We've not had a lot of entrepreneurs on the podcast who have done the 10 to 100 million ARR mark, right? And 100 million is a phenomenal achievement. It puts them in a very, very elite sort of a club. And it was amazing to talk to Anand about what changes at scale, So this is a fantastic episode, definitely not one to be missed.
Awesome. So, folks, if you want to know when this episode is coming out, do follow us on our social media channels. On Twitter, we are at Operator Startup, and on LinkedIn, we're called the Startup Operator. Do let us know how we can improve on our production, on what sort of content you would like us to talk about. We'll try our best to incorporate that. And apart from that, you'll see a WhatsApp link in the description below. Do click on it to start receiving updates straight into your WhatsApp inbox. That's it for this week, and we'll be back with more updates in the week after. Have a great week ahead.
See you guys. Take care.